Welcome to ATC CAD. My name is David Atkins. If you've just installed Revit and are getting your feel for the program, you may hit a roadblock when you try to load your first component. For reasons probably related to the fact that you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, the default Revit installation no longer includes the default components. In today's episode, I'll show you how to find and install them so you can get to work quickly. Newer versions of Revit have added a new Cloud Family command, Load Autodesk Family. It can be found in the Insert tab of the ribbon, and it allows you to search for default components without needing to download and install them. I do think this is a nice tool to have. The search function is rather nice, and if you're looking for components from a country that you normally don't work in, it's easy to change your location settings and pull in that random flange size that fits the machine you just bought in New Zealand. But I do see a few problems with it. First, the preview thumbnails are kind of awful. For architectural components like doors and such, it's not bad. I actually like it a lot. For other trades, however, let's take an example of a conduit fitting. It's not easy to actually see what you're looking at. Now, this is a problem in the regular load family dialog as well. At least with the old method, you can see the available list easily and use the arrow keys to move up and down in the list and see a larger preview. More importantly, as you start to find or create your own custom components, you then need to use two different commands to find what you need, which takes extra time. Centralizing these components can make that process a lot easier. We can talk about how I do that at the end of the video. For now, let's... Finding the default components is pretty simple. Open up a web browser and the search engine of your choice and search for Revit Families and the year of your version of Revit. Usually the top entry is a link to the Autodesk Revit content page. You only need to scroll down and find the one that you need. They are separated into Revit and Revit LT libraries, so make sure you find the section that fits which version of Revit you're using. For 2024, there's a link at the top to get to the LT libraries instead. In my case, I'm in the US, so I need to find the US English content for Revit, which includes the US Imperial and Metric libraries. Easy. And yes, we do use Metric, we just pretend we don't so the rest of the world can make memes about us. If you're in another country, you may need to get several different ones. America isn't the only country with multiple standards. Before the EU was a thing, all European countries had their own nominal sizes. So while downloading the generic international version in your language will work for most of your needs, you still may need to interface with existing facilities that were built to the old standards. You'll find these in the specific country downloads. So if you're in France, bonjour, you'll probably want both the generic international French and the French content libraries. Also, if you're an English speaker working on a project in another country, you can grab English versions of many of those countries' libraries. For instance, if you're an American designing a project in the EU, make sure you're getting the International English Euro Content Library and aren't using the US Metric Library. These are different standards because of course they are. The English versions are not a complete list of country standards, however. If you're doing a project in Korea, you won't find these standard libraries in English. You'll need to
한국어를 배우다
instead. Sorry. Now that you've found and downloaded the library packs you need, it's time to... This part is super easy. You don't even need to shut down Revit. Double-click on the library that you just downloaded and run the installer. It will place the library in the default location for your version of Revit, and you're done. The default library location is managed in the Revit Options in the File Locations tab. If you're the only user, you can leave this alone, but if you're hoping to share your library to all of your users in your organization, you will need to change this setting to your server's library folder beforehand. Each library you downloaded has its own installation file and will need to be installed separately. I noticed that some of my students' Revit 2024 installations didn't include the family templates that you need when designing custom families. According to Autodesk, you need to reinstall Revit, but if you can't be bothered with doing that, you can get away with installing one of the international family libraries like Euro or Canada. Oddly, the US English packs don't include the family templates like the other language packs do. You'll just need to check your units before you start modeling, as they are set to metric by default, which you probably need to do anyway because the US has 23 different unit standards, and that cut sheet you're using is probably in hogsheads per furlong. Fun fact, A hogshead is a different volume depending on if you're describing beer, wine, or sugar. Finally, let's talk about managing Revit libraries. You won't be using Revit for very long before you start to download custom components or create them yourself. You might be tempted to put your cool new families in the default library, but I personally don't recommend it. It's easy to get them mixed up in each other, and that causes issues when you get the new version of Revit and now need to separate them out again. That's too much work. Now, there are a ton of library management systems you can look into. If you're managing 100 designers, you should probably look into these. There are dozens of them. Which one you choose will depend on your trade, your IT infrastructure, and your favorite color, which makes this well beyond the scope of this video. There is an easy method that I like to use that you might find helpful. I make a file folder with all my custom families in it. In the beginning, I just kind of toss them in there. Now here's the trick that I like. There's a good chance if I don't have a custom family, I'll need to start looking in the default library. So I put a shortcut in the custom folders that take me to the default folders, like this. Eventually, as I start to get too many to want to scroll through, I'll start making categories for those families and move them into it, adding new shortcuts as I add new folders. This way I can make my custom folder the default folder and still have a quick and easy access to the Revit libraries. I find this a really easy method to use, and it bridges that gap between being new to Revit and having a fully custom library. Now that you've got your Revit families loaded, you're free to start your next project. Unless you're an electrical engineer and you're using Revit 2024 because Autodesk kind of broke all those families. In my next video, I'll cover how to fix that fun problem. If this helped you out, clicking the like button would be really swell of you. Do you manage your Revit libraries in a different way? Leave a comment and tell me how you do it. Subscribe if you like what you see and hit the bell icon if you'd like to know when new videos come out. Finally, if you're interested in our AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, Fusion 360, MicroStation, Civil 3D, SketchUp, or 3ds Max classes, check us out at AtkinsTechConsulting.com. As always, I'm David, and happy CADing.